Ever since William the Conqueror came here almost 1,000 years ago, Windsor, on the banks of the River Thames, has been home to a castle. Windsor Castle isn't just one of the Queen's favourite palaces, it is absolutely central to the monarchy. It has been a royal palace for longer than any other building in Europe. The story begins around 1,000 years ago. The Normans arrived here, they conquered England in 1066, and they chose this spot next to a strategic river crossing over the Thames and dominating London to the west as a place for a stronghold. They built this artificial mound, they put a tower on top of it, and since then, kings and queens have enlarged and invested on a gigantic scale. Edward III turned this into one of the great royal residences, spending more money on this than any other secular project of the time. And as a result, today, it is magnificent. To get an exclusive tour, I'm meeting curator Kate Hurd. Hello Kate, how are you?
Hello.
Thanks for having me
Welcome
in your
to Windsor.
castle. Now, I always think of Windsor as a sort of medieval fortress, but actually it's like a palatial stately home, isn't it? I mean, whose fault is that?
Well, it's a medieval castle, but the castle you see today is largely the work of George IV, who was king from 1820.
And he turned it into a sort of a modern house.
He did. He inherited a castle which had been changed from the medieval castle in the 17th century. His parents had made some changes, and for him it didn't work as a modern royal residence. So he set about this huge programme of rebuilding and reconstructing and redesigning.
This is beautiful here, isn't it?
This is just wonderful. This is his original entrance hall. So he opened it up so his visitors would come through that door and would be able to walk into this magnificent space.
But this feels a little bit to me like a 19th century Gothic, which we think of being later in the century, do we?
It is absolutely. It was always the entrance to the castle, but it was a smaller entrance. George III had a staircase coming up, but George IV opens it up. But he's so aware of the medieval history of the castle, he does it in that Gothic style.
So for people who don't know what I'm talking about, this like kind of fake, really.
It's reimagined Gothic.
Reimagined,
Fake in a sense, but reimagined. They were very consciously looking back to particularly the reign of Edward III, who was another great builder at the castle. Creates this amazing vaulting system.
It's stunning, isn't it? And so I guess visitors come here and think, oh, medieval. In fact, it's only 150, 200 years old.
Absolutely. George IV had been wanting to get his hands on Windsor for so long, and he really goes to town with this medieval history when he does.
You say that, is that because Windsor is in some ways the sort of spiritual core of the English and British monarchy?
It's the medieval fortress. He's very interested in medieval history. It's possibly the most imposing residence. Remember Buckingham Palace, which is now really grand. When he inherited it was quite a small townhouse his mother had lived in. So this is the grandest and most imposing of the royal residences.
And I guess it's the one associated with Edward III that they all love.
Absolutely.
Charles II was very fond of it here as well.
He'd also lived here as a boy. I mean, remember it's his family home as Prince of Wales. So he has a great fondness for the place.
So this is are they allowed to say it, but is this their sort of premier residence?
I think for George IV it is the one that he becomes most interested in. It's the one that we know that he spends hours poring over the redesigns. He becomes really occupied by it. So I think for him it is the the residence that he spends the most time on.
And what about the subsequent ones? We've got William. What about Victoria, his niece? What did she make of it?
Well, Queen Victoria inherited it. She also made great changes to the castle. So the space that we're in, you can hear it echoing. You can hear the size of it. She bricks it off. Because she changes the staircase again, she bricks it off, she doesn't want this grand entrance. And it's only now that it's been opened up again and we can appreciate that great vision of George IV, who wanted his guests to come up that wonderful approach, the long walk, and through those doors.
Definitely. Why did Victoria brick it off?
Well, I think she again, it's a different time, the castle has different needs. You know, each generation needs something different from it.
Amazing. Right, where are we off to next?
I think let's go to the state apartments.
Let's do it. This is the grandest staircase I've ever seen in my life.
Isn't it wonderful? It's the entrance to the state apartments with George IV looking over it.
Looking at all the visitors to his new rooms.
Absolutely, yes.
And a huge amount of weapons, arms and armour.
Yes, all from the royal collection, that historic collection that goes right the way back. But George IV is a big collector of arms and armour as well.
Well, he's obsessed with the military, wasn't he?
Absolutely. Everything he can do, he's not allowed to fight, but he forms this incredible collection.
And even more muskets and swords here.
Absolutely. This, in the medieval castle, this space would have formed a guard chamber.
Oh, okay.
It would have protected the state apartments, so that this displays reflect that function.
And I'm trying to think, Windsor Castle, I think it was threatened during the sort of Civil War at King John when Prince Louis came over. I can't, was it besieged at the time?
No other sieges, as it were. Henry VIII, I know, during the Pilgrimage of Grace was here, and there was a worry that it would be besieged, but it wasn't. It wasn't.
So now, this room is extraordinary, isn't it?
Isn't it stunning?
Wow.
This is the Waterloo Chamber, which holds this incredible series of portraits, largely by Sir Thomas Lawrence, of the men who were responsible for the defeat of Napoleon in the early 19th century.
We got Wellington up there.
Absolutely.
Commander at Waterloo. Blucher, his key ally at Waterloo.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's an incredible series of portraits.
Emperor of Austria.
Yes.
So George IV was very kind to let his dad go above the mantelpiece.
George III is the monarch who is ruling the country.
True.
So at that point, our George is Prince Regent. So he acknowledges his father's role, but he puts himself in very clear second place.
I love this because this is basically all the crowned heads and the leading aristocratic military men of Europe, all for whom Napoleon represented an existential threat. So this is a giant celebration.
Yes. And this commission starts before the Battle of Waterloo. It dates from 1814, when they thought that Napoleon had been defeated, and George sends Thomas Lawrence out to make these incredible paintings. And the half-lengths of the statesman as well. He's acknowledging the role of statesmanship in that, creating that peace after Waterloo, after the fall of Napoleon.
Was this room always a sort of banqueting hall?
No, in the medieval castle, you're standing in the open air.
Oh,
so
really?
you're in one of Edward III's courtyards, in the middle of a run of apartments. And George IV had commissioned these incredible paintings. He wants a Waterloo gallery. And this space is earmarked for it, but it's not really finished until after his death. So it's roofed over, and then these wonderful lights are added, and it's not really finished until the reign of Queen Victoria.
How funny. I always think of a very modern idea, which you take your big atrium, your big courtyards and turn them into an atrium, but actually they were doing it in the 19th century.
Absolutely, it's a wonderful use of the space. And the space also looks back to the earlier castle, to the 17th century castle. You can see these wonderful pieces of wood carving, and they're taken from Charles II's chapel there by Grinling Gibbons, reused in this space, and they work wonderfully here.
Wow.
This is St George's Hall, which is
the world famous.
Fantastic, and has always had the function of a great hall for meetings, for feastings, for great occasions.
And this was a medieval hall?
Originally this space was Edward III's.
Right.
We still have Edward III's undercroft beneath, which is just recently opened up for the first time. It becomes under Charles II a very Baroque space. It looks very different with wall paintings. Under George IV, it's turned again into a medieval-looking space, a Gothic space, and he lengthens the hall by essentially knocking the chapel and the hall together. Okay. But it's not entirely successful. His ceiling, his Gothic ceiling, is quite low, and everything is plaster, essentially a plaster fake for a medieval building. Now, the 1992 fire affected this space very badly. So what you see again is the reconstruction in 1992 of this great sort of Gothic space. This amazing hammer beam ceiling roof designed by Giles Downs. It's in green oak. It's a masterpiece of craftsmanship, which the hall has always been all that way back.
It's amazing. It's something so British about this, that it's a reconstruction of a reimagining of and yet so it's both very historic and very long, but also ever changing.
Ever changing, but always grounded in history, and it reflects the importance of the castle as the seat of the Order of the Garter, which is the oldest order of chivalry, founded again by Edward III in 1348. And so the shields you can see decorating the space are the shields of the Knights of the Garter all the way back.
Really?
Yes.
That's a remarkable continuity, isn't it?
It's stunning.
A lot of arms and armour on the walls again. I'm noticing a theme here.
Yes.
And what's that? That's a very fine one up there.
That's wonderful. That is the champion's armour, which was last used at the coronation of George IV.
What's that?
That is traditionally, going all the way back to the Middle Ages, a champion defends the king's honour after he's been crowned and issues a challenge to anyone who may want to challenge the new king and throws down his gauntlet. And that is the armour that's worn by the champion. It's a hereditary office.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Whoever that was, and his father and his grandfather would ride through the coronation.
It's the Dimmock family, absolutely. And George IV is the last person to have had the champion appear at his coronation.
And so he rides a horse through the party and throws down the gauntlet?
He does indeed. Through the coronation banquet for George IV in Westminster Hall, the horse rides in as part of the ceremony.
What happens if, grandson Dimmock was a bit of a softie?
Still gets to do it.
And they still have functions in here?
Still used as a space that is for feasting, for state occasions. It's still used in the way that Edward III would have been familiar with.
And as we leave, there's George IV.
There's our George again, yes.
Looking down on what he's built. It's a nice little room, isn't it?
Isn't it fantastic, that octagon? Looking back again to the medieval precedent, places like Ely Cathedral with the octagon there.
And who's this? Is this Henry VIII?
This is Henry VIII,
I don't
yes.
believe it, that's so cool.
You get that sense of the figure, don't you?
Yeah.
That really imposing presence.
Wow.
Just amazing.
They must have had to let that out slightly, has he?
Yes, well I think it was probably made for him in his maturer years.
And then we've got all the silver and the...
Some of that wonderful silver and gilt from the Royal Collection, really stunning pieces.
And I suppose this just accumulated over hundreds of years.
Absolutely, just added to by each generation.
That's amazing. That's unique, the continuity of the British state and its royal tradition means that you must just have centuries and centuries of all these treasures.
Absolutely, yes. Each monarch is also aware of the history, so you get George IV looking back to the Middle Ages and looking back to the Baroque period and building on that when he's building his own collection, so you get that awareness of the layers too.
Where next?
This way. So this is the really wonderful crimson drawing room.
Wow, this is peak George IV. It's just so opulent and gorgeous, isn't it?
It is. It was one of his
Gilded.
private apartments.
Oh,
it's
was
one of his major reception rooms. So he would have private guests here, but it's one of his.
So do you think we're getting close to his tastes and his?
I think we're right in the middle of his taste here. It's very different from the rest of the castle. It's in this French neoclassical taste that he loved all his life. It's a stunning space.
And it's this French, these objects that he purchased that are now so famous at Buckingham Palace and everywhere else because he just hoovered this stuff up, didn't he?
Absolutely. I mean, all this wonderful furniture was commissioned by him to furnish. Obviously, he's got a small residence as prince, and then he gains Buckingham Palace, he gains Windsor Castle. He needs all this furniture to fill it up. So he commissions these wonderful suites of furniture. Just stunning.
I just love the gilded detail on these doors.
Yes. Some of the gilding on the doors was brought from Carlton House again, and so he brings quite a bit of material from Carlton House. The fireplace actually dates from 1807, before this room was established, and is from Carlton House and was brought here when Carlton House's London residence was demolished. And
does this room survive the Great Fire in the 90s?
No, very sadly, this room was very badly damaged, but it was reconstructed using the original documents from George IV's reign. When George IV is planning this room, a set of really magnificent watercolours are made for him to show what the room might look like. And that archive he uses in planning his spaces is then reused in the 1990s for planning this space, and it's beautiful. He would have felt very at home in this room, even though it is largely reconstructed.
So in the centre of this gigantic royal palace, administrative headquarters, medieval you think this is kind of George IV's personal space?
I think this is where we meet him most of all. The place where he would have relaxed. He's got his portraits of his sisters on the wall. I think he would have enjoyed this space.
And he was a sad man in many ways. He was extraordinarily infirm with a variety of illnesses towards the end of his life. It's strange to think of him sitting here in those declining years when he was almost a recluse, wasn't he?
He was a recluse. He didn't like people looking at him. He'd been tortured by satirists. He really did withdraw during his reign, that 10-year reign. But he surrounded himself with these incredible objects he'd collected, and he clearly takes such pleasure in craftsmanship and beauty and this beautiful sort of skill in creating things in textures and colour. So you can imagine him very happy in these rooms.
Isn't it funny that he probably felt insecure because compared to, say, George II or the Duke of Cumberland, you know, his martial relatives,
Yes.
he'd never fought on the battlefield.
Yes.
And yet, actually, what the modern world looks for now is a collector and interior designer. You know, so his reputation's probably higher than ever.
We can appreciate him now for these amazing things he left us, this incredible collection he formed.